the survey will be done on the 16th, which actually has demonstrated quite a bit of characteristics, but also I believe Levi's working on putting some data together regarding racial profiling. I think maybe Aubrey, did he have a conversation with you last week or something?
Kind of small,
Yeah,
kind of brief.
yeah.
Yeah.
That seems kind of important. I mean, that's sort of the reality of the situation, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're trying to identify like what our community perceives the needs to be, right? So we know that there's this global issue, but then it's like, okay, but right here, what are our biggest issues? And I think that's what we're kind of.
Yeah.
The biggest issue out here is the mental health, to deal with mental health issue. That's like the number one thing so far is, 'cause my daughter has mental health, and somebody called the cops a while back on us. And I told her, just calm down, calm down. Something about it, she wanted a bigger piece of cake or something. She's like, she was 18 at the time, and she don't understand her mentality level. That cop came in and goes, if you don't stop crying and screaming, blah, 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 next you know, she's on the ground in handcuffs. Yeah, that's why I was like, my wife's like, we're just freaked out, because he goes, well, it's for my safety, I didn't know she was gonna do something. You know, everybody looks everybody looks happy.
Going here anyway.
So we're returning from executive session, for a, personnel matter, and, no decisions were made. For the old business, we have Michelle for the operationalizing of the executive order. Would you like to take the lead on that, Michelle?
So I just thought I wanted to, and just in terms of the way I like see things, I tend, not black or white, but I just wanted us to come back to the order. And to Elizabeth's point, we have until December, what is the date?
The resolution empowers us until December 31st. So procedurally, we've been over this duty before. There's some things that we need to understand about the deadlines attached to our work.
Right, can I finish my thought though?
Oh, can I finish my explanation, and is that okay?
You go ahead.
Okay, so the resolution leaves us in power until December 31st. If this panel, as it is comprised, would like that to be reflected into the next year to continue to do the work, April of 2021, in line with the executive order deadline, that would require a new resolution from the council. Any decisions that, any recommendations from this panel that have budgetary impacts would have to be enacted by the end of October at least, because because the process in line with the executive order, which is recommendations, public feedback, submit to the council, and then legislative action, anything that is going to have budgetary impacts, Ira Barbell and I are the Public Safety Committee, and we are making decisions for the budget for next year. So if we waited until April to do all recommendations to council and legislative action and budgetary impacts, anything budgetary would not be able to be enacted next year. You would have to wait, because you can't change budget in April. It's just not the way the municipal budget process works. It would have to go into the budget for the next year. And so the budget process in a municipality starts at roughly July.
That's my point. I wanted us to look at the executive order, specifically things that I thought we didn't touch on, and which is why I sort of like green, almost like a RAG analysis. I was just looking at it again and saying, what are some of the things we definitely looked at? What are some of the things we touched on lightly, and what are some of the things we didn't look at? And I specifically was looking at, they talk about using an evidence-based model to look at addressing racial bias, disproportionate community policing, granted that we're getting the data back from the survey. But I was also looking at things like the implicit bias awareness training, conflict resolution, looking at hotspots. So I just felt that there were some things that we didn't really touch on, and I was wondering how I can bring that back to the fore to say, these are some things that the executive order asked that we look at, and just bring it back to our attention. Not a judgment, just an observation to say, can we look at these things again?
So, I would echo what you're saying. In the guidance that came out, I uploaded to the drive, it actually has the suggested work plan. I have it open to that page, so at the very end. So there's several phases. There's planning, listening and learning, draft initial proposals, public comment, and revise and ratify.
Right.
It kind of touches on what you're saying in each of these phases. If we're to use this, we're in the listening and learning phase, September and October. Draft day plan is November, December. Public comment and ratification, January through March, and then you submit for the local legislative body. But it touches on these things like identify measurable goals, draft a reinvention plan, identify areas of focus. These are the things that you're talking about, but we're still kind of assembling some ideas, I would guess.
Right, and assembling ideas, and I think my question was, as we assemble these ideas, can we assemble the ideas in a way that is honing in on these parts that it's asking us
That's
to
what
look at?
these things specifically reference. All 100 pages are exactly the same things that you talked about in just greater detail.
Right.
So this is just the short part of it, but these go back and reference the things you're talking about. So I'm agreeing with you that this should be our guide, and it addresses all the things that you're mentioning there. It's very well laid out.
So, do you have a suggestion then, on how, between both of what you're saying, you're kind of dovetailing here, do you have a suggestion on,
My suggestion would be, that our earliest, we should have a list of things that we are going to tackle.
Yeah.
We've kind of stalled at policy review and just asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we should really be targeted in what our identifiable goals are here, much like what you're bringing up.
Right, and really do a RAG analysis, and when I say RAG, red, amber, green. And in that RAG, we might not be able to do all of this, right? But based on those goals and objectives, there's some clear things we can say, oh, we can do this, and then we hone in on those, and we start doing more listening, and then move into the planning phase. Otherwise, we'll just be circling and spinning. And I don't want us to get to that point, because I also don't want the community to be frustrated with us. And I think some of this frustration that we hear from people that come to the open, what do you call it?
Public comment?
Public comment, thank you. Could be some of that frustration with looking at this and saying, what are they not touching on? So I just wanted to bring us sort of like back to just bring it back to our periphery, because it's here. But just to say, these are the things that we could be looking at. And so I think Chief Ritter's suggestion is well taken.
Yeah, this is already written, we don't have to reinvent everything.
No, it's all
It's
here.
right there.
It's all here.
Yeah, I said that early on, if there's some great work that's been done already, and we just have to piggyback on some of that and put it in context that's appropriate for our area.
Right.
Because some of this talks about the large cities and the urban areas.
Mm-hmm.
But we can bring it back and say, you know, for our area, this is what we see. You know,
But
and as far as, the money is concerned, we know we need training, so we need to go on and work on that and get that in, so we can, have that in that budget, for them to even consider something for 2021, because it's needed.
Right. And can I say one more thing that addresses something that Amanda said?
Mhm.
And so the email that I sent was me just writing as I was thinking. But in some of the work groups that Amanda was suggesting that we do, maybe that could be one of the ways that we do some of this work, right? So they talk about studies addressing systemic bias in policing, implicit bias training, and a number of other studies. Maybe there could be a work group that could be looking at those studies and then bringing that evidence
To submit it.
to, and, I like to dig into studies.
I was just gonna say, like, we only have, I think, eight more meetings scheduled till the end of the year, something like that. So 8 meetings at an hour and a half for 8 meetings, so that's not much time if the only time we put into this is during this meeting. So that's why I've been pushing, and I don't mean to be pushy, but the idea of work groups, because people have specific interests and specific skill set, and if we can hone in on everybody's interests and skill sets in specific work groups, then I think we can get more done.
And I think that's a conversation we needed to have so that there's a transparency, so that we're all on the same page of why we're doing this.
Not print it and say, this is it. And sometimes sending emails to say, you gotta get back to me by 12, that's good that you send it out like that. But a lot of times you can't get back to that right at that point. So we'll get back when we can, but we need to be considerate of, people's time as well.
No, I
And not
agree, but
consider-
we need to
not
be
to-
considerate of the timeline and also of people's time. If I send an email out suggesting something and I don't hear one way or the other, I'm assuming that A, you didn't read it, B, you don't care, or C, you just agree with what I
You just
wrote.
can't assume that, you gotta give people an opportunity, because from the time you send the email out to noon.
And I sent, 2 weeks ago, I've sent emails out, this whole last 2 weeks, I think I've heard
Now,
from
I'm not
2 of
talking
you.
about those emails, 'cause I didn't have a hard email, I didn't have a,
That's the problem, is
I didn't have a
people aren't
suggestion.
responding, so if people aren't responding, I just assume, well, we gotta do the work, so let's move forward.
That's something actually I've been struggling with.
Sometimes you have to wait a little bit.
Yeah, but Maxine, I do understand Amanda's concern, because and I think Caprice can appreciate this when she was my vice chair, is that we'd send things out and ask people to respond, and, very few people responded, and this has been an ongoing issue since the beginning of the panel. And we want
I'm just asking,
everybody.
maybe for a little more time, like, people get kind of
Well,
tired.
and that's why I
Like
don't.
a day, give us 2 days or a day or so.
That's
to
why
get this
I
done.
don't finalize the agenda until Monday morning, is because of the people waiting till last minute. And if you're appreciative of the time that it takes to do that, it would be nice to have it in a more, timely fashion. Like, there's a good 4 or 5 days after we have the meeting for you to put something on the agenda, which would be like a Friday or Saturday morning. But to do it Monday morning does actually make it harder on me, because I finalize the
No,
agenda.
that's not what we're talking about.
Well, isn't it though?
No, it's not the agenda.
But the things that get put on the agenda, I have to finalize them, and I do that Monday morning because of how late things come in. And I think that's what Amanda's trying to say.
I heard exactly what she was saying, but I'm saying, a lot of times, okay, if you're off on Tuesday, you don't get that email asking for that. So, what do? You just don't answer it at that time.
And that's fine,
Because
we
you
don't.
can't.
Right, and I'm
So
not
give
talking.
people a couple days, at least.
And Maxine, I'm not talking about like 1 or 2 days, it comes in like 5, 6 days later, and that is the concern, because it makes it harder for me Monday morning. I have to get up early to get this agenda out for Beth to print it for us for today. And
You know,
that's,
they're supposed to be able to go on the agenda today for me, even.
it's not supposed to, but
Well,
things are so late that is,
I don't
and to be
really-
fair to the members of the panel, and what
I
they
don't
should
really
be on
put
the
things
agenda.
on the agenda the last one.
I'd like
No,
to bring
I'm
this
not-
back to our work. Michelle had comments about our work, our goals, our charge. Levi answered. We got a timeline. I really would like to interrupt this because of time and
Yes,
say,
yeah,
this
that's
can
fine.
happen another time. I don't know if you wanna go to Michelle or where at this point.
Are you guys okay on